Before now, for Dawn, always and forever. Chapter 1. My name is Katherine Wilcox, but for the first 21 years of my life, I was Katherine Hammond. I was always a good, studious child, a grade A student, well-mannered, probably rather bookish. I loved books, and I still do. I had warm, loving parents to whom I was devoted, and as an only child, I was their pride and joy. I was deeply pragmatic and fascinated with history. I also secretly harbored a deeply romantic nature. I was a good girl. Yes, I was Sandra D. My only real act of teenage rebellion was when I started smoking. And yes, it was because of a boy. And when that relationship inevitably fell apart, I continued to smoke because I liked it. I found it relaxing and it made me feel grown up. I went through college, studying history and psychology, and graduated summa cum laude. To top up my college funds, I had taken a job as a librarian, and after graduating, I took up the job full time. I love the feeling of being surrounded by books. All that wisdom, all that imagination, it was my sanctuary. I might have happily spent my entire life there. I certainly couldn't imagine anything else. That is until I met the man who would irrevocably change the course of my entire life, Don Wilcox. I have always been blessed with a pretty good memory, although I've found that certain details have faded over time. But it's an odd thing. I remember every moment with Don perfectly. So profound was the impression he made upon me, and I'm grateful for every moment because, honestly, not a day goes by that I don't miss him. Not that he was by any means perfect. He was impulsive, infuriating, exasperating, mercurial, and brilliant. And I loved him completely, despite and because of all his many flaws. But not at first. Let me back up. My father, Ian Hammond, had gone into hospital for a minor procedure to correct a potential cataract. My mom, Sylvie, and I went in to pick him up afterwards. Mom was helping him into a wheelchair, the hospital insisted, and I was just gathering his things together when I happened to notice the occupant of the next bed. He was a young man, whose features were soft but strong, with mousy brown hair a little too long for my taste. He seemed completely out of it when suddenly his eyes opened and fixed on me with an intensity I had never experienced. Rather drowsily, he asked,
Have we met somewhere?
"I don't think so," I replied politely.
Are you sure?
"I have a pretty good memory," I told him.
I know you.
He mumbled.
I know you from somewhere.
Then he passed out. That was my first encounter with Don Wilcox, a young man who, my dad told me, had just been in a motorcycle accident. My opinion of motorcyclists was not favorable,
Apparently, he died in the ambulance.
Dad noted. "He looked pretty alive to me," I said cynically.
His heart stopped.
He added,
I think I heard a doctor say he was gone for 3 or 4 minutes.
Shame.
my mom commented, not really paying attention,
He seemed like a nice boy.
and that, I thought, was that. In my librarian manner, I filed the whole encounter somewhere in the back shelves of my mind and carried on with my life. That is, until a few weeks later, we met again. I was enjoying my mid-morning break as I usually did in a nearby park, sitting on a park bench, cigarette in one hand, a book in the other. I was reading Wuthering Heights for the third time, and I was so engrossed, lost on the Yorkshire moors, that I failed to notice someone approach. Until he spoke.
I remember you now.
He said. I looked up, and at first I didn't recognize him. His face was more animated, with a confident smile, but it was his eyes that I remembered. "Oh, yes," I replied shortly, "from the hospital a couple of weeks ago."
Oh, no. I meant before that.
He replied with an annoying grin. "I'm pretty sure you're mistaken. I told him firmly.
And I'm certain you're wrong.
He countered.
So, where does that leave us?
It was becoming apparent that he was not going to go away, so I carefully closed my book and looked at him. What exactly is it that you want? He ran a hand through his mop of unkempt hair and replied,
I would like to buy you a coffee and explain to you exactly how it is that I know we have met before.
As pickup lines went, it was one of the most pathetic I'd ever heard, so I just stared at him.
Or we could do that here.
He continued relentlessly.
I just thought that coffee would be a nice gesture. Think of it as a bribe.
I took a long, slow puff of my cigarette, continuing my silent consideration of this annoying intrusion.
Free coffee?
He implored. I finished my cigarette and crushed it out. Then you'll go away? He struck a ridiculously theatrical pose, hand on heart, arm outstretched.
If I can't convince you I'm right, then I shall gladly leave you, never to return.
Good, I replied, checking my watch. You've got about 11 minutes. The nearest coffee shop was conveniently located directly opposite my library, so we walked there. I let him buy me a coffee, and we took our seats close to the window. Okay, I said, lighting a cigarette. Talk fast. He didn't. He just looked at me in consideration for a few moments, then gesturing to my cigarettes asked,
Could I?
Help yourself, I sighed. I sipped my coffee as I watched him take a cigarette and light up. He instantly erupted in a huge coughing fit. He looked ridiculous. You've never smoked before? I chuckled.
No.
He spluttered, wiping tears from his eyes.
But then there's lots of things I've never done.
He said as he recovered.
I've never jumped out of an airplane, never danced naked in the rain. I've never gotten married. And until today, I'd never taken a beautiful librarian out for coffee.
I scowled at his attempted flattery.
What I have done,
He continued pointedly.
is die.
Yes, I gathered, I responded.
Good. Saves a lot of explanation. Been there, done that. Not doing that again.
He tried another puff of his cigarette and winced, with only a gentle cough this time.
So, when I was gone, dead or whatever, I had an experience?
Out of body, I offered.
No, definitely not that.
He paused thoughtfully.
More like I had a flood of memories, images, faces, places, voices, all coming at me at once.
So your whole life was flashing before your eyes? I suggested.
Well,
He mused.
that's the thing. Yes and no. They were and they weren't. I couldn't really make any sense of it. But it was all so familiar.
Then he fixed me with that same intense look he had in the hospital.
Then I woke up in that hospital bed and I saw you, and I recognized you.
Yes, I remember. But you still haven't explained from where.
From that crazy flood of memories. Memories that weren't mine, but they were. And you were there. In all of them.
What are you trying to say?
I'm getting to that.
He took a mouthful of coffee, then continued.
So, I got out of hospital, but I couldn't get you out of my head. So I found a very nice lady named Eunice, who is a regression therapist. And she helped me to remember.
Regression? I said dubiously. You mean past lives?
Yes,
He slapped the table and nearly spilled his coffee.
that's exactly what I mean.
Okay, I replied. Now I understand. I thought you were mistaken, but now it's clear you were simply delusional. He looked surprised.
Wow. So cynical. Are you so sure you've never lived before?
Yes, I answered firmly. The whole idea is ridiculous.
What if I can prove it?
He persisted. And just how do you propose to do that?
Like I said, I know a regression therapist. Come with me and see for yourself.
You want me to get hypnotized? I said incredulously.
God, no.
He replied.
I would never be so presumptuous. I I want you to watch as I get hypnotized.
And what's that supposed to prove? I challenged.
That it's not a delusion,
He replied vigorously.
that we have lived before, and that you and I, Miss Katherine Hammond, are linked in some strange, fundamental manner. Soulmates, if you will. Always and forever.
I was momentarily distracted as I wondered how he suddenly knew my name. I hadn't offered it. Then I realized it was written boldly on my librarian's lanyard. Good observation. Then I caught up. Soulmates? I scoffed. Now I know you're delusional. I had heard enough, I decided, so I finished my coffee, crushed out my cigarette, and got up to leave.
That's it?
He said with surprise.
Aren't you even just a little curious?
No, I replied coldly. Then, purely out of politeness, I added, "Thank you for the coffee." He sighed and slumped back in his chair.
Okay, I know when I'm beaten.
He said,
I promised that I would leave you in peace and that I shall do.
"Good.
But
But?" He looked up at me with that gaze of his and continued,
if I'm right, and we are indeed soulmates,
I snorted derisively.
then we shall meet again, and there's not a thing either one of us could possibly do to avoid it.
I stared at him, my expression cold.
The universe will draw us together, and when that happens,
I raised a skeptical eyebrow.
okay, if that happens, then will you at least concede to my request and watch me go under?
I gathered myself and replied, "If that were to happen, and I even suspected that you had orchestrated the situation in any way, not only would I not concede to your ridiculous request, but I would immediately obtain a restraining order against you."
That's fair.
He conceded with a faint smile.
And if you were certain that I was completely innocent of any kind of collusion.
Well, that would be impossible, I thought, so I shrugged and said, "Sure, but it'll never happen."
Well, I guess we'll see.
He smiled.
Until then, I will wish you a good day, Miss Hammond, and thank you for your time.
I huffed and headed for the door, but before I could open it, he called me back.
Oh, Miss Hammond, don't forget your book.
I had forgotten Wuthering Heights.
You wouldn't want to incur any late fees.
He grinned. So, once again, I put Don Wilcox out of my mind and got on with my life. And I had plenty to occupy me. I had decided that it was time to strike out on my own, so I was engaged in the challenging business of apartment hunting. This was a couple of months later, in early June. It was a bright, sunny Wednesday, and I was standing outside a prospective apartment building waiting for Ellie, the realtor, to show me a very interesting apartment. It was in a good neighborhood and very convenient for work. It was a little pricey, but Daddy had offered to help out if I needed it. Ellie seemed to be running a little late, so I was just cooling my heels when a voice from behind me declared,
Well, well, Miss Katherine Hammond, now isn't this a delightful surprise?
I turned, and it was him. He was dressed almost exactly the same as I last saw him. His hair was a little wilder, and it seemed he was trying to grow a beard. It didn't suit him. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded. He smiled, pulling a set of keys from his pocket and glancing at the door.
I live here.
He said smugly.
I guess the real question is, Miss Hammond, what are you doing here?
I suddenly felt queasy, and I'm sure I blushed. "I'm looking to rent an apartment," I admitted. He stepped past me and started up the steps.
So, we could be neighbors? How about that?
The look in his eyes was triumphant. He had got me. He knew he had got me, and I knew it too. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. He opened the door and was about to step inside, but I called, "Wait, how long have you lived here?" He stopped, looking down at me with that infuriating grin.
Oh, about 3.5 years.
He replied.
Why do you ask?
Just curious, I sighed.
Good luck with the apartment.
He said as he went inside. Let me just state that not for 1 second did I even consider the possibility that this was indeed the universe bringing us together. My only consideration was that now I was going to have to indulge his ridiculous fantasy and waste more of my valuable time in his infuriating company. Neighbors? Like hell. There was no way I was going to choose to be neighbors with him. I was just about to turn and walk away when Ellie finally arrived. Of course.
Sorry,
She apologized, getting out of the car.
traffic. Have you been here long?
No, not really, I replied. A couple of minutes. She gathered her paperwork and gestured up the steps.
Shall we?
I paused to examine the mailbox and noted the name Wilcox in apartment 4B. Do you know the gentleman in 4B? I asked Ellie as we went upstairs. Mr. Wilcox?
Donnie?
She replied.
Yes, he was one of ours.
Has he been here long?
About 3 or 4 years, I think.
She confirmed.
Do you know him?
We've met, I replied. She then proceeded to tell me all about Donnie's recent accident. I just nodded half-heartedly and told her I was aware. Of course, there was no way I could take the apartment, which was a shame because, frankly, it was perfect. But I excused myself on the basis that it was outside my budget. Ellie seemed genuinely disappointed, but accepted my explanation and promised to keep digging for something a little more affordable. Which left me with an embarrassing obligation to fulfill. I made my apologies to Ellie and told her I was just going to check in on Mr. Wilcox and I'd let myself out after. She promised she'd be in touch, and we parted company on the 4th floor after she directed me to his apartment. I took a moment to compose myself, then knocked firmly on the door of apartment 4B. A few moments later, the door opened and Don Wilcox grinned at me, leaning nonchalantly in the doorframe.
Well, Miss Hammond,
He said,
are we going to be neighbors?
I'm not taking the apartment, I replied firmly.
Shame. It's a nice building.
Then he added,
I would invite you in, but I doubt you'd accept.
You got that right, I told him. Listen, I'm not conceding that this is anything other than a ridiculous coincidence. His expression was one of unwavering smugness. But we had an agreement. You want me to watch you get hypnotized? Okay. Set it up. He nodded.
I'll be in touch.
He said. I turned smartly and walked away.
You have a great day.
He called after me. I was incandescent with rage and embarrassment. I wanted to break something, but I had more sense than that. So instead, I walked into the nearest bar and proceeded to drink an entire bottle of wine and smoke nearly a half a pack of cigarettes. He wasted no time. The following day, as I left work, I found him leaning against the fender of my car, smoking a cigarette. You know those things will kill you? I noted sarcastically.
Something's got to.
He replied with a grin. I paused as I realized why he was waiting for me. Now? I queried.
Why not?
He replied.
I figured you'd probably want to get this over with as soon as possible.
You got that right, I said, opening the passenger door first. Okay, get in. Eunice looked like she had just missed the swinging 60s by a couple of years and was now making up for it. Actually, my first thought was that she looked like Mama Cass, if she had lived. Her office was like something out of a circus. Lots of drapes, candles, burning incense, and weird mystical symbols mixed with psychedelic art posters. It was so flaky, no wonder Dawn liked her. But she was bright, friendly, and seemed genuinely open and direct. Kind of motherly. Another plus for Donnie, no doubt.
Eunice, this is Miss Katherine Hammond.
He introduced me.
Is she?
Yes.
Oh, how wonderful.
She beamed delightedly.
Come in, dear. Have a seat. Would you like some herbal tea?
No, thank you. I declined, wondering exactly what kind of herbs she might be referring to.
Have you ever been hypnotized before?
She asked. I'm just here to watch, I replied resolutely.
Miss Hammond is something of a skeptic.
Dawn explained.
Oh,
Eunice seemed genuinely disappointed. She turned to me.
are you sure I can't get you anything, dear?
I'm fine. Thank you, I replied. Dawn shrugged and took a seat in a large wicker armchair, which creaked alarmingly under his weight.
Okay, let's do it.
He said brightly. Eunice again turned to me.
So, I'll be guiding Donnie into a deep trance where his mind is open and we can access memories of his former lives.
I nodded.
I would ask that you keep an open mind and remain silent throughout the session.
She continued.
During this trance, his subconscious mind will be highly suggestible. We don't want to inadvertently influence his experience in any way.
Yes, I understand, I confirmed. Inwardly, I thought, what a bunch of hooey, but I kept it to myself. Then she turned her attention to Donnie and began to speak. I watched carefully and attentively, studying Don's reactions as Eunice took him into a trance. What particularly surprised me was that she didn't seem to be doing anything other than just talking gently, instructing him to relax and let go. I had absolutely no experience of hypnosis back then, and it seemed decidedly odd to me that there was no great secret or magical component. And yet, as she continued to guide him, he seemed to be genuinely slipping into a kind of deep sleep. His posture, his breathing, his expression, all softened. He looked completely gone. Then Eunice glanced at me and nodded, with a soft smile. And turning back to Dawn, she began to take him back in time. Again, I was paying particular attention to her words. I wanted to see if I could find her leading him in any particular way, or offering subtle suggestions that might betray some kind of trickery. But as far as I could tell, she was being particularly careful in her choice of words, simply instructing him to drift backwards in time until he found something that resonated. And then something truly strange happened. Don sat up, his eyes still closed, but his whole posture and demeanor had changed, somehow becoming more poised, more formal.
Where are you, dear?
Eunice asked politely.
France.
He replied crisply.
The Abbé de Valois. I'm here to requisition supplies for my unit.
I gasped, then quickly recovered myself. I knew something of the history of that monastery.
Your unit.
Eunice queried.
You're a soldier?
Yes, Second Lieutenant. Francis Singleton, 1st Battalion, Royal Sussex Regiment.
The formality. The clipped manner, it was fascinating. His accent hadn't changed, but his whole personality seemed entirely British. He'd even pronounced lieutenant correctly.
I'm not familiar with the Abbey.
Eunice carefully prompted.
Could you please describe it for me?
Well, it's a grand old building.
He replied, again with a typical British understatement.
I'm not terribly well up on such things, but I believe it used to be a Cistercian monastery. Under better circumstances, I expect it would be quite beautiful. Sadly, for now, it has been commissioned as a base hospital.
You are here to requisition supplies?
Yes, I'm just waiting for the quartermaster to gather the kit. Frankly, I'm just in the way.
He paused for a moment, then announced,
I'm just popping out for a spot of fresh air.
very British. I was actually getting a little frustrated by the fact that Eunice was very carefully not leading him. I had about 1,000 questions I wanted to ask.
I step outside into a long, vaulted cloister, strangely peaceful after the furor of the hospital. Although I notice I am not alone. There's a young girl here, a nurse. Poor thing looks exhausted. She's fumbling with a packet of cigarettes. Oh dear, it seems to be empty. I step in and offer her one of mine. Mademoiselle?
Again, Eunice was not prompting any of this. No cues, no signals. Where was all this coming from?
She accepts gratefully. I ask if she's had a rough day, and she looks at me like I'm barking. They're all rough now, she tells me. I feel like an ass.
More British colloquialisms. This was certainly intriguing.
I introduce myself properly. She tells me her name is Leonie. Beautiful name. She's a local girl from the village of Dominois. We chat idly for a while, enjoying our cigarettes. Her English is very good and she is charming company. Then, another nurse pokes her head out of the door and calls for her. She is needed. But, before she leaves, she kisses my cheek. How delightful! I sincerely hope, when this ghastly business is over, that I shall see her again.
I couldn't restrain myself. I had to know. So before Eunice could say a word, I hurriedly asked, "Do you know what year this is?" Don turned his head quizzically and replied.
1916.
Then Eunice jumped in.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Donnie, it's time to come back to us now.
And she gently brought him out of it, back to the present.
3, 2, 1. Wide awake, dear.
Don opened his eyes and stretched.
Well, that was new.
He said to Eunice. She just smiled gently. Then he turned to me expectantly. I applauded, slowly. Impressive, I noted calmly.
Oh, come on!
He declared at my lack of enthusiasm.
Were you watching that?
Like I said, impressive performance, I replied. But you could have come up with the whole thing beforehand.
How?
He blustered.
Where the hell would I get all that? Names and places I've never even heard of?
A little research. It wouldn't be too difficult,
For you, maybe.
he exclaimed.
I wouldn't even know where to start.
He turned to Eunice.
Come on, back me up here.
Eunice smiled gently.
You saw everything that happened, Catherine. You were paying close attention, and you know that location, don't you?
I nodded. She'd caught that. Eunice was pretty sharp. I know a little, I confirmed. It's a 12th century monastery quite near the Somme. It was used as a military hospital during World War I.
See,
Don said excitedly.
I did not know that.
I began to feel like I was losing ground, so I changed tack. Anyway, I thought the whole idea of this was to prove that you and I had known each other in a former life. I've seen absolutely no evidence of that.
Yes, you have,
Don continued triumphantly.
because I recognize that nurse. Okay, so, Lieutenant, Fauntleroy had never seen her before, but I recognized her immediately, because she was you.
So you're telling me that I was a French nurse in World War I?
Yes,
I scowled. Of course you have no way to actually prove it,
well, no,
he admitted.
but you do.
Aha! So this was the plan all along. Drag me along, put on a show, then try and get me to buy into it. And from the look in his eyes, the challenge, he clearly thought he had succeeded. But I didn't have to do it. I could just get up and leave. I really could. Except I wasn't moving. So, why am I still sitting here? I thought. With a silent sigh, I realized that they had piqued my curiosity. I had to know. Sure, I could just walk out right then and there. But if I did, The idea would plague me for the rest of my days, like a stone in my shoe that I could never shake loose. Damn it. Ignoring Dawn, I turned to Eunice. Do you really think you could hypnotize me? She smiled gently.
I have been doing this for a long time, honey.
She said.
I think I've gotten pretty good at it.
I looked at Dawn, matching his challenge, took a deep breath and said, You're paying for this, I take it? He nodded. Okay, let's give it a shot. He got up and swapped places. I sat carefully in the wicker chair, which was surprisingly comfortable, and looked to Eunice. I suddenly felt both nervous and oddly excited, trepidatious but strangely determined. Part of me wanted this not to work, that maybe I couldn't be hypnotized, or that I'd simply go under and get nothing. But that curious part of my mind had taken hold. What if I had lived before? Who might I have been, and when? Was it even possible? Eunice just smiled calmly.
Okay, Catherine.
She began.
So Donnie has done this a few times now. He's getting easy. But since this is your first time, you might need a little help.
She turned to retrieve something from a nearby table, and I suddenly thought, wait, what? I'm not taking anything herbal. What she presented was a metronome, which she carefully wound, then set in motion to a slow, steady beat.
A little something to focus on.
She explained. I nodded. The steady tick, tick was quite pleasant and easy.
So, I'd like you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath and let it out slowly. That's right.
And Eunice began to gently guide me into a trance. Of course, I could give you a blow-by-blow account, but I'm not writing a how-to manual here, so I'll just stick to my general impressions. With the slow, steady tick of the metronome and the gentle, soothing sound of Eunice's voice as she instructed me to let go, I soon found myself sinking deeper into relaxation. My body became heavy, my thoughts became softer, less urgent, more peaceful, and I began to drift away into my own little world. The real world of external reality released its hold on me, and I allowed myself to surrender to a new and profound tranquility. Then Eunice asked me to begin counting backwards from 10, down to 1, suggesting that with each number my relaxation would deepen, and that the more I relaxed, the more those numbers would simply fade from my mind. I don't think I got past 5. By then the numbers were gone, and I guess so was I. Even after years of experience, I'm not going to try to explain or describe the sensation of deep trance. I am not a poet. I lack the words. So I'll just be clinical. I was not asleep, not by any definition. But nor was I entirely conscious, at least not as we might usually define it. I was someplace else. Then Eunice began to take me back, not to a former life, but back to a childhood memory. I was 5 years old and we were on vacation at the beach in Malibu. It was warm and beautiful. Daddy was helping me build a massive sandcastle. Then he picked me up and carried me down to the water's edge. He put me down gently and the waves lapped over my feet. I giggled and we began splashing around. It was so much fun. And that memory was so profound, so powerful. I felt small, and my joy was absolute and unrestrained. It was wonderful. Then Eunice told me to let that memory go, but holding on to those feelings, I drifted back into the depths of my trance. And then she took me further, back across time, to a memory that resonated. It was a shock, like suddenly breaching the surface after being underwater. Everything came into focus: light, sound, no, noise, tumult, chaos, the inexorable machinery of war. I had no time to think or take stock of the situation. I was already in motion, carrying blankets for the wounded. Stretchers choked the sacred halls of the sacristy, a dense carpet of the wounded and the dying. I had to carefully pick my way through the chaos. Another young nurse hurriedly accepted my blankets as a doctor, his clothes already drenched with blood, took my arm and directed me to a stricken figure lying beside the statue of a saint.
Clean him up, quickly. I need to see how bad this is.
I didn't hesitate. I knew my job. I dipped a flannel in a bucket of mostly clean water and wrung it out, then tended to my charge. The soldier's face was a mask of trench mud and dried blood. His left eye was gone, but he might survive, if he was strong. I began gently, but firmly, to clean away the mud and dirt that obscured what was left of his face. He was unconscious and his breathing was shallow. With the huge influx of casualties, he had been waiting a long time. I realized that, almost unconsciously, I was muttering a gentle prayer for the poor man as I worked. Then his remaining eye opened and blurrily fixed on me. For the first time, I could truly see his face after my ministrations.
Leonie,
His voice was soft and ragged, but his tone so gentle.
what a delightful surprise.
I gasped. It was him. Lieutenant Singleton. Oh, God. Time froze. My heart pounded in my chest like a hammer. I felt nauseous. His moment was brief, and he slipped back into unconsciousness, but the effect on me was unbearable. I stood breathlessly, like a puppet, pulled on strings. How could this happen? Why? I couldn't bear it. I ran from that place, that charnel house, in shame, in horror, in tears, beyond control. I ran.
Catherine, Catherine, honey, come back to us now. Let that memory go. You're safe. You're with friends. Come on back now.
My mind was a whirl. Eunice's voice scarcely penetrated the flood of emotions. Then suddenly it passed. I fell into a deep well of darkness and followed Eunice's voice back to the light.
3, 2, 1. Wide awake, honey.
Catherine?
I still find it hard to describe my feelings at that precise moment, because it was such an intense and profound awakening, a seismic shift, leaving behind the nightmarish memory of war and returning to a world I suddenly realized I barely understood, because I had recognized Lieutenant Francis Singleton, not the man, but the essence of him, his soul, I guess. And he was Don. It was all true, and that truth shattered the very foundations of my entire life. My ordered, cataloged librarian existence crumbled. I was broken. And just like Leonie, I ran. No, I didn't just run from that place. I fled. At first, I was just frozen. I don't know how long, just staring at the floor, registering nothing. Then I raised my head, looked at Dawn, gazing at me in concern, and I saw Francis Singleton, his one good eye, regarding me from that stretcher in a moment that resembled something from Dante's Inferno. It was too much. I bolted. The rest is a blur. I don't know how, but I made it home somehow. I had left my car and my purse and Dawn back at Eunice's office. I just remember running up to my bedroom, slamming the door and collapsing onto the bed in floods of tears. Why was I crying? Crying for Lieutenant Francis Singleton? Crying for Leonie? Crying for the horrendous loss of so many lives in a senseless war? Or maybe I was crying for myself, for an innocence lost. To this day, I still don't know. Eventually, there was a gentle knock at the door, and my dad came in, a nervous figure beside him.
Catherine? Are you okay, honey? This young man was worried.
I looked up, and it was Don, standing sheepishly beside my father, his expression anxious. I don't know what came over me, but I flew into his arms and clutched onto him like a drowning man might grasp a piece of driftwood. my dad, who almost certainly had been getting ready to tear Don to pieces if he found that he had harmed me in any way, suddenly became deeply embarrassed at this unexpected display and mumbled,
Right. Okay. I'll just go fix something.
and he took himself back downstairs. Somehow, Don managed to get me back to the bed and sit me down, all whilst holding me in his arms as gently as I held on to him in desperation. My tears hadn't finished with me, and he held me close, stroking my hair as I wept onto his shoulder piteously. Don, I later discovered, was not the most patient man in the world, but for me, on that day, he displayed the patience of a saint. And yes, I chose that reference deliberately. Eventually, my well ran dry, and I surrendered to just holding on to him like my life depended on it. Then, as my grip lessened, he put a gentle finger under my chin and lifted my head so he could look at me.
Wow.
He exclaimed,
You were not ready for that, were you?
"No." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pack of cigarettes, lit one and passed it to me silently before lighting one for himself. I took a long, slow puff and drew deeply. It felt good. It felt real and oddly reassuring. We just sat there and smoked for a while. I guess he was waiting for me to figure it out for myself, but I didn't even know where to begin. Eventually, he said conversationally.
You know, I think you had it easy.
I looked at him quizzically.
I mean, I had to literally die.
I chuckled despite myself. I guess so,
Feeling better?
he asked. I don't know. I don't know what I feel. I struggled, or even how.
It's pretty big, I know.
He put his arm around me and said,
God, you're still shaking?
I can't stop, I replied hopelessly. I feel like the whole world is just made of paper. I was about to start staring at the floor again, but he got up and took my hand.
Would you come with me, please?
He said gently, "Where are we going?"
Nowhere, just for a walk.
Okay. So, we walked, side by side, hand in hand, quietly, keeping our own pace and following an entirely capricious path. If I were asked to retrace our steps that evening, I couldn't. The city seemed so unreal to me, so unimportant. I was locked in my own thoughts, whilst trying not to think at all. Only the warmth of Don's hand in mine, the certainty of his presence beside me kept me from losing myself completely. He was my anchor. Somehow, eventually we found ourselves in the park, approaching the bench where we had met that second time. I guess we both came to that realization together. We stopped and I broke the peaceful silence between us. "Did you plan this?"
No.
He replied gently.
I just follow my nose, and it generally takes me where I ought to be.
I nodded and we sat down together, still hand in hand. I couldn't let go, and sensing that, he held fast. The park was quiet in this late evening and quite beautiful in the slow, fading light. Don fumbled with his left hand, retrieved his cigarettes, and offered me one. I took it, and together we lit up and filled our lungs with tobacco smoke and cool evening air. This was good, like an oasis, a piece of real normality in the shifting desert of confusion that still threatened to sweep me away.
So,
He said casually.
do you come here often?
I cracked up completely. The cheesiest pickup line in the world, and it was perfectly appropriate. "Yes," I chortled helplessly. "Yes, I do." He laughed with me, sharing the moment. As my laughter faded, I took a puff of my cigarette and said, "So, I was a French nurse in World War I."
Yes,
He said gently.
Leonie.
"Léonie Delattre," I added, the syllables tasting strange but utterly familiar on my tongue.
You know her name?
"Yes, but I don't know how."
Yes, you do.
I paused, the sheer impossible weight of it bearing down on me. "Okay, yes. But what does this all mean?" He sighed, blowing a stream of smoke into the fading light.
Who says it has to mean anything?
He began.
I guess if you want it to mean something, it means that the universe is stranger and more complex than we ever imagined. What was it Shakespeare said? There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophies.
I managed a faint, tired smile. He was a smart guy, that Shakespeare. We paused our conversation to finish our cigarettes. Then I said, "Wait, does this mean I'm stuck with you?" He let go of my hand, and the world didn't shatter. Instead, he looked at me and replied,
Hey, I'm stuck with you.
Something shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. He got to his feet and looked at me fiercely.
Now listen here, Catherine.
He began.
No, I'm not calling you Catherine. Too formal. Listen here. Kate.
I scowled. I hated that contraction. I am not a Kate, I told him.
You lie.
He whirled dramatically.
In faith, for you are called plain Kate, and Bonnie Kate, and sometimes Kate the Cursed. But Kate, the prettiest Kate in all of Christendom.
I continued to glare at him, despite his rather impressive performance. Then he stopped and stared back at me for a moment, considering me carefully. Then he grinned and announced, as though I had been trying to deceive him, but now he had discovered my secret.
No, you're no Kate.
He paused, pointing an accusatory finger.
You're a Kathy.
I think my expression might have betrayed me. I did like Kathy. Wherever this ridiculous performance might have been headed, it was interrupted. We had failed to notice that the fading light was a result of the rolling clouds above, and Don's train of thought was suddenly derailed as the sky opened up. It was raining. He turned his face to the heavens, drinking it in. Then he whirled back to me, extending an inviting hand.
Dance with me, Kathy.
"Oh, hell no," I replied, recalling his list of things he'd never done. He saw my expression.
We don't have to get naked,
He conceded.
but dance with me.
"There's no music," I protested.
We don't need music. You're my music.
He declared. "Oh, you are so full of it," I noted, taking his hand reluctantly. And we danced in the rain. Let me just say, right now, that Don Wilcox was a truly terrible, terrible dancer. Plenty of enthusiasm, but no sense of rhythm. And as the years passed, he never got any better. Not that it ever stopped him. It was crazy. It was stupid. It was wet, and it was wonderful. We danced till we were too giddy to continue and just fell onto the wet grass, laughing like children. Then, as our laughter faded, I turned my head and looked at him, like I was really seeing him for the first time. I didn't really know about the notion of our being soulmates. But I do know that moment, right there, was when I fell in love with him. From that moment on, I was utterly smitten. I couldn't possibly imagine a life without him in it. He sat up with a huge grin.
Come on now.
He said.
You can't possibly tell me that wasn't fun.
I smiled up at him. He checked his watch and said,
Whoa, it's getting pretty late. Come on, let me take you home.
"No." He looked down at me quizzically, and I reached out, took his hand, and said, "Don't leave me." His expression softened.
Kathy, surely you know by now. That's never going to happen.
I met his gaze and said, "Prove it." He needed no further bidding as he leaned down and kissed me. It's a measure of his sense of decorum that we didn't just tear each other's clothes off right then and there, but somehow he got me back to his apartment and we made love for the first time, and the second time, and so on. I had never needed the touch of a man so desperately as I did that night, and Don was wonderful, gentle, warm, passionate, considerate, and relentless. He gave me exactly what I needed. It was perfect. I will also add that we did eventually dance naked in the rain, and more. But that was later, after we were married, and the location was much more secluded. And whilst I cannot say this with absolute certainty, but I hold it in my heart to be true, that our daughter Janet was conceived on that occasion. The timing is about right. That moment was special, and so was she. To conclude this chapter, I will add that over the course of the following weeks, as Dawn and I grew even closer, I began my first research project, searching the records for any trace of Lieutenant Francis Singleton and Leonie Delattre. Not to prove they existed, I already knew that, but to find out what happened to them. Did they survive the war? Did they ever meet again? I started with Lieutenant Singleton, figuring that military records should be well documented and easy to follow. I was very wrong. During World War II, a bombing raid on London destroyed 60% of all service records from World War I, and the surviving files are fragmented at best. I did make contact with some very helpful people along the way, however, who would become friends and valuable resources in later years. But that particular avenue was sadly a dead end. So I turned instead to Leonie. I knew she was a local girl, so I focused on the Abbaye de Valoir and surrounding regions. And in the parish records of a church in the village of Dominois, I found a record detailing the marriage of one Francis Singleton to Leonie Delattre. They had survived, and they had found each other. By getting in touch with the Mairie de Dominois, the local town hall, I was put in touch with a local historical society, and they were able to fill in some of the gaps. Leonie had returned to the Abbaye after her meltdown and tended to Francis during his recovery. Actually, she steadfastly refused to leave his side and got into a lot of trouble because of it. But Francis did recover and was shipped back to England, where he was graded as unfit for frontline service and essentially given a desk job. After the war, in 1919, he returned to France and went searching for the pretty young nurse who had saved him. He found her, and they were married that same year. The Historical Society, actually a charming gentleman named Pierre, found an old photograph and sent it to me as a surprise. There they were, hand in hand, standing in front of a delightful old cottage. Francis had adopted a rakish eye patch and still had that stiff military bearing. Leonie beside him was radiant. Don loved that picture. I left it out on the coffee table deliberately, and when he saw it, he said,
Hey, is this?
Of course he recognized Leonie instantly, and was delighted to find that the rakish figure beside her was Francis. He loved the eye patch,